Good evening and welcome to a new edition of To The Point. This evening we're going to be discussing digital economy and e-commerce. Where do we stand? What is the potential here in Egypt and how do we fit globally? And more importantly, do we need to protect ourselves? With us this evening is a very distinguished gentleman. With us is Engineer Ahmed Al Atifi, who is the founder of the Arab Forum for Digital Economy, among so many other hats. A pleasure to have you with us this evening. When we talk about digitization, the president has been really hammering that we need to digitize our economy. This kind of transformation, when it comes to Egypt, where do we stand right now? Where do we rank? I mean, we're a country whereby over 40% are internet users. The number is growing very, very large. We're a country over 60% are from the younger generation, and they are the ones that are very much into technology and the latest tech, so to speak. Where do we stand right now?
Well, actually, in the past several years, the government has embarked on big programs actually to invest into infrastructure. We spend more than $200 billion investment into infrastructure projects, and there is a lot of ambitious projects that are ongoing. These ambitious projects might be more than our capacity, but we are pursuing it. The economy of Egypt is doing well, and among one of the very few economies in the world that is contributing positive growth, encountering positive growth above around 3%. The digitization of the economy is very important actually in order to be able to go to the next phase. What is very important is that we understand, and we started to understand quite well, that building hard infrastructure is important, but soft infrastructure is what is going to enable the potential of hard infrastructure. One of the most important aspects of soft infrastructure is actually digitizing the economy. Digitizing the economy comes on multiple fronts.
I was just going to ask you, for those who are not aware of, what is digitizing the economy?
Well, actually, we have to digitize the government. That's one of the aspects.
Yes.
And there is lots of programs and efforts into this. The efforts actually need to be more because the ambitions are high.
Yes.
But concerning the other aspects of digitization is business line digitization. And the matter of digitization, it is not automation. Digitization is building a new business concept. The whole business concept would change. So this is very important, and now the economy is dependent on platforms, and platforms are medias that bring people together. And by bringing people together, we started to create value. So this is what's happening. This is another important front. The other important front, or the third important front, is related to the transformation of society, the usage pattern, the culture of people. These are very important aspects in order to realize the digitization potential and unlock the requirements for the soft infrastructure that would help us leapfrog and build on what we have done in the hard infrastructure.
The culture, because we still have people that like the hard copy. They don't believe in the soft copy. Most of the business with government, for example, is still relying on hardware rather than the software, so to speak. The culture, are we adaptable to that culture? Are we, if you walk into a supermarket abroad, for example, you don't have a cashier anymore. You simply walk and you check yourself out, so to speak. Can we easily adapt? Can we introduce that culture and get people to feel that it is facilitating and it is safe?
Of course, using digital equipment, smartphones, and all these aspects is very important for people, and it is people are learning as they go, and there is a learning experience. Now, the advances of technology that has happened, allowing us actually to interface directly through voice interfaces. We don't have to type anymore. So this will help us actually overcome the issue of illiteracy. And we have seen that the adoption rate in this country is very high. We've seen that around 50 million people are using internet, which is around half of the population of Egypt. There is around more than 30-something million people that are using Facebook. And some of these people are not very literate, okay? Now the language barriers also has being solved because now translation exists. So you can have an automatic translation of a piece of text and have also a voice read out of this part of the translation. So what is happening now is that the technology is making it easier for people to adapt it. You will be surprised how the new generations are technology savvy despite their level of learning or sophistication, because they use games. They are more open than the older generation into these aspects. The other aspect which you mentioned is very important is the issue of the safety and the security, which is a major concern everywhere in the world. Actually, the world is all looking at this problem, and we are trying. This is the main barrier for people using e-commerce and doing transactions and banking online. It is being held back by the fact that there is a very big risk at this point in time, or they're afraid. Maybe the risk is not there, but there is a perception of risk.
One of the important sectors that is affected by digitization is the health sector. Take into account right now that we're also talking about COVID-19, a pandemic, and lockdowns and so forth and so on. How is that sector benefiting or not benefiting from digitization? It will be answered with a distinguished guest. With us is Dr. Islam Anan, who is Professor of Pharmaceuticals, Economics and Epidemiology. Dr. Anan, can you hear us?
Yes, perfectly. How are you?
How are you, Dr. Anan? Digitization of the health system, where do we stand thus far, taking into account that COVID-19 is really forcing us to take very, very large strides?
Yes, that's actually a very good point. So we were expecting to reach a good digitalization of healthcare and e-health by 2025.
Yes.
But we had to make it faster due to COVID. So I guess that's one of the merits from having the COVID pandemic is we increased heavily the e-health system. And by e-health, we mean two things, actually. First is process, where we can link the different health sectors together, from the service providing, the hospitals, the labs, and the imaging centers, and the counseling with the patients, and even with the procurement system and the e-purchase system for the supplies.
Yes.
The second one is the e-counseling. We didn't have an e-counseling system in Egypt before COVID. It was very rare. We are talking like 1% to 2% only. But currently, we do have a lot of apps, a lot of websites where they facilitate a portal between patients and physicians to have an e-counseling. Of course, it's not going to fit all symptoms, because we still need the physical interaction between physicians and patients.
Yes.
However, it decreased the pressure on the hospitals and making them at more ease to accept more COVID cases or the more severe cases at the hospital.
Usually whenever we talk, and I have with us in the studio Engineer Ahmed Al Atifi, and maybe I'd like to get you both to join in this discussion. And here we're talking that whenever you talk about digitization, healthcare and what have you, we also cannot forget research and development, R&D. How do we stand as far as that field is concerned, not only in economy in general, but especially in the medical side or in the healthcare side? R&D, are we supporting, or is the level of R&D in Egypt supporting digitization in various sectors, especially critical sectors like healthcare?
Well, the issue of R&D has changed. Now we have crowdsourcing and crowd problem solving. And there is a lot of problems that has been attacked in a crowd basis in order to solve the problem, and also through sort of competitions or bootstrapping camps and things like that. This is a major trend that is going actually for problem solving worldwide, that is supporting the R&D. And it has been affected a lot by the issue of digitization. And also we will see in the future more platforms coming out to bring people together. We've seen this actually happening before in the software industry, where people through the crowd and the shareware, they have worked together into big projects to develop certain products. I believe this is a trend will continue. It will continue in the R&D sector, and we'll see more and more collaboration between researchers in order to take this to the next level.
Dr. Anan, how do we stand, R&D and healthcare?
Perfect. So if we are talking R&D, we do have two types of R&D. innovative R&D, where we are actually innovating and creating new molecules for pharmaceuticals. And we don't have an R&D in the Middle East. We are not innovative in creating new molecules. It's very rare. We are talking about less than 10 molecules have been invented in the Middle East and Africa in our pharmaceutical history. However, the second part of R&D is remanufacturing an innovative product innovated elsewhere. And in terms of R&D for manufacturing, we stand as the first place in Egypt, by the way, in terms of production, in terms of R&D for Middle East and Africa, where we are taking the APIs, the raw materials, we are taking the know-how of the innovative medication, and we remanufacture it at our plants, pharmaceutical plants. However, digitization was very, very much involved in R&D on a global system, because if you are even looking at the vaccines currently developed for COVID-19, digitization was actually of great help to find a digital portal where we can do a simulation for the impact of the vaccine on human before actually testing on human on clinical trials. We tested on simulation programs. We are communicating with the rest of the world, because it actually depends on connecting sites, clinical sites, all over the world at the same time to see whether there's any adverse event of the human subjects, there is any, for example, efficacy problems in the subjects taking the vaccines, and it's all collected in a big data system. Without digitization, we would have been actually lagging behind maybe 2 or 3 years to have the results that we are currently having for the COVID-19 vaccine. So yes, it's of great help, and without digitization, R&D was actually going to be standing late, maybe like 2 or 3 years than we are currently at the same position now.
Dr. Anan, is there any fear for the pharmaceutical industry with digitization? Is there fear that, because in some sectors, for example, people are concerned that you're replacing the human power with, or the labor with machines? Is there fear that we will start to lose or to create further more unemployment because we're replacing people with machines?
That's a very good point. If we're talking at manufacturing sites.
Yes, we're talking about the pharmaceuticals manufacturing here.
Yeah, if manufacturing, it got affected with digitization maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. We replaced the new machines because most of the medications currently, it's a high-tech medication. It's very hard to ignore digitization and high-tech machines. So most of the plants worldwide, and including Egypt, we replaced a lot of human power with machines and with artificial intelligence to predict exactly the exact amount of excipients, of active ingredients, and so on. And if we are talking even on an e-trading thing, we currently have a big problem for pharmaceuticals. I guess you are tackling a very good point for the after manufacturing, the purchase itself, because a lot of websites, a lot of portals are actually doing the e-trading, excluding the warehousing, excluding the sub-agents and the pharmacists from the process itself. And we do actually now in the process of doing legislations for the process, because if so, we do need a lot of governmental laws to see whether the e-trading is based on prescriptions, it's based on the pharmaceutical laws, are we following the pharmacopoeias or not, because till now we don't have a patient act in place for the e-trading, unfortunately. We are currently, the government is actually discussing it, and maybe by 2021 we can see something like this, which is going to make it more regulated in terms of e-trading for the pharmaceutical sector.
Dr. Islam Anan, thank you very much for your fruitful input. Engineer Atifi, labor, because there is a lot of concern that you're replacing labor with machines. In countries like Europe, for example, where they have a problem that people are not reproducing enough, they tend to indeed replace people with machines to do the job. Will we have that? Do we have that concern here in Egypt?
Well, actually, Japan is number one, and Japan concern is very high concerning they are starting to working on robotics, and because they have a shortage of population automation.
Yes.
The first industrial revolution has brought actually automation to the blue collars. this revolution is bringing automation to the white collars, and
Yes.
there is a lot of activities that would disappear. But as we have seen in the earlier industrial revolutions or earlier phases of the industrial revolution, we have seen that there is jobs that has been actually phased out, but there is other jobs that has been created.
Yes.
And the end result actually was a positive end result. I hope this revolution we will see the same. There is estimation that most of the jobs that exist today will disappear the way they are by 2030. Okay, there is a lot of jobs that will completely disappear. But there is, I believe there is lots of jobs that will be created alongside. We have seen in the past actually the industry for the agency, telephone agents and all those stuff. They grew up in the world. There was nothing before. Now this has grown in the past 5-10 years, and they have been a major recruitment cycle for people. Maybe this would disappear now with the process automation, robotic process automation, but definitely there will be other jobs that would be created in the future.
The digital revolution, how can it affect, or how can we benefit from that digital revolution in economic growth, will be under discussion a few moments right after this report. So please stay with us.
With technological developments and the emergence of the internet, other methods of trade had to emerge that differ from traditional commerce. What is known as e-commerce appeared, and to keep pace with these developments, it was necessary to know what it was and how to use it. Basically, it's the process of buying or selling products electronically, such as the internet or other electronic services, and the need for e-commerce emerged from the need to use computers more efficiently, whether in banks and companies, and with the increase in competition. Thus, it was imperative for organizations to use it in order to increase customer satisfaction and information exchange. Whereas companies closed and others shifted from profit to loss under the weight of the corona crisis and its aftershocks, this led to a boom in other economic sectors, most notably e-commerce. Since the outbreak of COVID-19, more than 85% of customers around the world having access to the internet now shop electronically. This is due to a number of factors. In some cases, the lockdowns do not permit customers to go on their shopping spree, notwithstanding buying their bare necessities. On the other hand, some customers see the need to avoid unnecessary contact and therefore prefer to order online. Others don't have a choice, and this can be due to an incapacitation or an advanced age. But the benefit that has emerged is that many business entities offering services to customers have speeded their transformation process. Whether they were planning to modernize or not, this pandemic led to a new reality, and thus forced a new timetable in order to keep up with the needs that have emerged. Even on the official or government level, entities offering services to the public have had to modernize at a faster pace in order to encourage the public to stay away from public places while at the same time receiving their required services. Some would say that the letter E is now the in word.
Welcome back. And indeed, COVID-19 shed light that the pace of doing things and the means of doing things is quite different. In the past, you used to go down and buy your stuff. Now a lot of people are relying on online. Technology is moving very, very fast. And here, before we go into e-commerce and this digital revolution and how it will be affecting our economy, you need the qualified people, because at the end of the day, if you have a robot doing a surgery, for example, and this is the case in some countries now, the robot is also built and operated by a person. The education, how are we going as far as education to meet that digital revolution? Is it going hand in hand?
Well, actually, there is, of course, education needs a lot of effort.
Yes.
there is a lot of programs actually that is appearing in the Egyptian universities and lots of new universities. I believe in the past 5 and next 3 to 3 years, there is more than 10 or 15 new universities that are coming out. The government is putting a lot of effort into this. Egyptians are very talented by nature, and concerning the IT and the new digital revolution, most of the workers across the region are Egyptians. We constitute a large portion of the working force in the technology aspect as engineers, as technology providers, maybe more than 40%. So still Egypt is by far at this point in time capable of generating. Actually, at this point in time, there is a lot of Egyptians that goes to Europe, and Europe is depending much on the Egyptian talent actually to help them either on onshoring or offshoring. This is what's happening now. And they are going to several European countries. Of course, we need to train more. We need to do more than this. There is a couple of programs that is being underway. I believe we need more programs like India, for example. I've put a program to train 50,000 people to work on artificial intelligence. Egypt needs to do similar large-scale programs actually, because also labor is not only important for the country and upskilling and reskilling, it is also important as exporting labor is one of the major economic resources of the country and have been one of the main supporters for the Egyptian economy. So this is something we have been relying on, and we will continue to rely on, selling Egyptian talent.
Protection. Do we need certain legislation, certain governance, certain policies to ensure that we're protected? Because whenever you talk about digital, you talk about social media, you talk about internet, it's really a very open system, so to speak. And in critical sectors, if we're talking about digitizing our economy, for example, that means that all your sectors will be exposed. Is there a way to protect ourselves?
Well, actually, the world is very concerned about this issue. The world, not only us, is concerned about the amount of information that is available in the hands of few companies. And this kind of information that would know about the behavior of a person more than the person know. This information is getting more, and the predictability of the systems are getting more sophisticated as we go. As the AI gets sophisticated, as the learning patterns increases, as the time lapses, they are able to predict your behavior better than you can predict yourself. They know about you more than you know about yourself. This is something, it's a major concern, and the world is working on what we call Information Protection Acts and the right of people. And also one of the important things, the right of a person to be forgotten, to wipe out his data from the network. These are things the world is working on finding solutions for it as we speak now. There is legislation, there is European legislations that came out. I think we are still a little bit far away from having a complete solution to this. People have a lot of risk putting their data on the internet.
Exactly.
And there is a lot more data than it should be circulated, and it is available at the hands of a very few. Okay, this is a major concern. We should work on it. We're working on it, and I believe there is a solution that will appear and a balancing point between the people who are using our data or exporting our data. The most important aspect of this is people themselves. People have to understand. They have to have that they should not share most of their data. They should actually read the footnotes. They should not download
Which
software.
Most people
overlook.
Sort of skim. They just press accept.
Exactly. They accept. They don't read the licensing. They give consent for things, for free applications, free downloads, which they should not. Although, as I said, that more regulation is required, protection by the state in different countries, and I think it's an ongoing process now, and everybody is aware of this.
Will this contribute to more sustainable growth, in your opinion, in the long term, regardless of the hardships that we might have right now?
You mean sustainable growth in terms of the internet quality, or
in terms of the economy?
In terms of economy.
In terms of the whole economy, not just one sector, but we're talking overall.
There is a big discussion now in the world, and the discussion is saying that the COVID actually brought us a stoppage or a halt in order for us to rethink the situation. And maybe the pace of development of the humankind is very high, and it's coming at a very high cost to the environment and the planet and the resources on the planet. So a lot of people are coming up with some remarks into how we can evolve and whether our evolution actually is affecting the potential or the chances of the next generation, because we are exploiting too much. We are polluting too much. Eventually, this is something that still we are working on. The world is having no answer for this. The COVID has given us a space to rethink the way to go forward. And one of the important things, the effect of the digitization on the economic growth is very substantial, and it has been proven, and also it has been measured. Okay, so for the increase in penetration, there is measurement that say that there is an increase in mobile penetration, there is an increase in economic growth and economic activities. Digitization actually, more advanced economies, digital activities will constitute about 6%, and sometimes maybe in China up to 10%, okay, of the GDP of a country. So it is not only facilitating and increasing the productivity of workers, but it's also bringing value, not only ease of work and ease of doing things, but it's also bringing value in terms of economic revenues and economic prosperity.
We'll be looking at e-commerce in a few moments, but before we do so, digitization also affected politics. And here we have with us via Skype Dr. Mac Sharqawi, writer and professor of international relations from the Washington, D.C. Dr. Sharqawi, can you hear us?
Thank you very much for having me, and my regards for you and your audience and your
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We're talking about digitization, and here the question that raises itself since the new U.S. President-elect Joe Biden is out there forming his government, and a question really raises itself. Did digitization and social media help put Biden in the White House?
I believe that social media platforms in the United States help the Democrats in this election, of course. And we can see when Congress having Mr. Mark Zuckerberg, the Facebook CEO, in a hearing, he cannot even answer all the question about the privacy and how they are having 2 billion people, members in Facebook, and how they distribute this information and who have access to this information. I believe that's going to be a major issue from now on in affecting and influence the election in the United States. Of course, they have a lot of political ads being in the social media, in these platforms, and a lot of this story is fake story. It's not true stories. And in the same time, they are not taking any measures in order to tell the audience or tell who is reading this post in Facebook or Twitter what is the resources they can go to get that true about the stories. Maybe Twitter starting to making kind of remarks in President Trump tweets or Joe Biden tweets that the election is not done yet and it's not officially done yet. But of course, Congress needs to regulate what's happening on the social media platform, but they are fighting back very, very tough. They don't want to be regulated, of course, and they, depending on the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, is the free speech. But of course, that's affecting politics and affecting the United States people. We need to know what's going on with this tycoon platforms. 2 billion people are members in Facebook. That's scary.
Dr. Sharqawi, Biden has been naming some of his cabinet. How do you see this election thus far? He is going back to names that served with him under the Obama administration. Worth noting, he even got an Arab American to be part of his White House legislative affairs team, an Arab American who has Palestinian origins. The shape of the Biden administration, two prominent women in being named thus far as well. How do you see things? What kind of administration are we going to see in the future?
I believe that in his pick in his transition team, Mr. President-elect Biden choose now, up to now, it's four women in his administration. Kamala Harris, the vice president, and Janet Yellen, which was a former chair for United States Reserve Bank,
yes.
and also Avril Haines for National Intelligence. She is a CIA. She is a CIA former director, and also Linda Greenfield to be the United States ambassador to United Nations. I believe we still have a lot of positions not being filled yet. That's 6 positions, and he chose his Homeland Security, Mr. Alejandro Mayorkas, and also Mr. Jack Sullivan, his national
security advisor.
Secretary. I'm sorry. Yes, he is the national security advisor. That's, of course, the main keys, of course, and the most important keys is the Department of State's pick. He picked Anthony Blinken, and Anthony Blinken, he was a political advisor to Joe Biden for almost two decades, for 20 years, I believe.
Yes.
So. And he worked also as a political advisor in the Obama administration. This picks, of course, make it a little bit comfortable for the American people. These people are very professional, and it is not, controversial, any of these picks. And I believe he's testing. He's making like testing balloons for what the opinion is going to be about the first 6 of his picks into this, administration. And also he chose the chief of staff, Mr. Roland Kylan. Also, he chose an Arab American Palestinian, Rima Dunian, to be the first Palestinian American White House staffer.
Yes.
Of course, he is making diversity in his administration.
What about the John Kerry comeback?
He's facing a lot of issues.
What about the John Kerry comeback? I mean, he got the former Secretary of State to be a special envoy, but this time for climate. The fact that he's using Kerry again.
Oh, Mr. John Kerry, he is one of the most professional, career positions into the Department of State, and he held the most important file for Joe Biden. The first tweet for Joe Biden after announcing himself the president-elect that he's going to go back to join the Paris Convention for Climate Change. It's one of his top priorities. And I believe when he puts John Kerry in this position as a special envoy for a presidential special envoy for this file, I believe it's very important, and it's a message for for Green Plan for the Democrats that he's going forward for the Green Plan, and also he's going forward to going back again to climate change. I believe it's very important for a lot of American United States and also all over the world. He tried to keep his promises kept in his campaign running for a president. I believe he's doing so far he's doing good so far.
Yes. Dr. Makhshar, thank you very much for joining us on To The Point. Dr. Engineer Atif, e-commerce, where does Egypt stand? And more importantly, how can it attract foreign investment? Will it attract foreign investment?
Well, e-commerce in Egypt in 2017, there was a study that was done by UNCTAD, part of the WTO efforts actually to support Egypt. And this study has estimated that the amount of e-commerce in Egypt is around $5 billion. Considering that the world B2C or retail e-commerce is around $4.3 trillion, this is a very small percentage of the world. We see countries like China having about $2 trillion of e-commerce, of retail or e-commerce online, as opposed to the US, which has around 500 to 600 billion dollars. So we see that a country like China is more. We see the contribution in Egypt is very small. They estimate that these $5 billion from the Egyptian retail market is around 0.4%. Okay.
Okay.
So this is what they estimate. This study have put some targets for Egypt, and the target is to increase the e-commerce to 2.3% of the economy. With the pandemic, we've seen a lot of initiatives that came up. There is a lot of companies that were working in the region that have started to open up in Egypt for delivery, and there is a big boom in this sector. The other aspect of e-commerce is not only the B2C, it is also the B2B. And we have seen that platforms like Alibaba has helped a lot increase the exports of China. And this is something Egypt needs to look at it very carefully, because this can help a lot into boosting the economy and helping especially the small players, the SMEs, which usually are the backbone of economies, into doing more activities and exporting more.
Will it help them survive the tough times of COVID-19, for example? Would this be a savior?
Well, actually, the COVID is very tricky to predict, and small businesses, of course, are very much affected by the COVID. Most of the governments in the world has put programs to support the business, to support employment. And of course, Egypt is trying by itself to do something similar. They have put together 100 billion Egyptian pound actually to support this. But Egypt capacity is not like the United States, it's not like other countries capable of doing prolonged support for people of unemployment and supporting businesses. We've seen a lot of programs in the UK trying to attract. Although Egypt has been one of the less affected countries according to the official figures in terms of the COVID.
Best performing economy.
Best performing economy, we have been less affected also on in terms of the epidemic and across according to official figures. So I believe that hopefully if the pandemic will not go, I think Egypt will be able to rebound very quickly from the current situation. And we will be able to rebound quicker than other countries. And I believe that this will also signal the return of the investment to Egypt, a strong return of international investment to Egypt, something that is much needed in Egypt now in order to be able to fuel and continue its economic growth that has been sustained over the last 4 or 5 years.
Are there specific sectors which you would advise can really gain from e-commerce? And what about regional trade when it comes to, for example, we're always complaining that intra-Arab or intra-African trade is quite weak. Will e-commerce, can this type of trade or technology give a boost to
This is a very
numbers?
important question. Egypt is at the heart, at the crossroads. We've always seen that Egypt has been at the crossroad of trade. The Suez Canal is a very important trade corridor across the world. Now the commerce and the supply chains are changing. Okay, it's very important. The way we do commerce and the supply chains are changing. Egypt is very well positioned, but we need to do a lot of work in order to benefit from the upcoming transformation of e-commerce and the B2B e-commerce and the transformation of the supply chain. Still, Egypt is bound by is being crippled by several aspects. One of the main aspects that's crippling the potential of Egypt is the customs systems. Still, at this point in time, there is some efforts. I heard Dr. Ma'id this morning actually speaking about what we are doing in terms of transforming the customs and automating the customs in order to reduce the timing and the cost. What is very important also, that is the cost, because here in Egypt we still, the time of getting things cleared up can go up to 20 something days. Okay, and the cost of getting in and out a container can reach $3,000. We are still at the very low category into this part. I think this is something that has been put on the agenda of the country, as I think it is a matter for Egypt. It's a matter of life and death. Because if we build a very nice building, and then the door of the building, which is the customs, which is crippled or it's closed, then the whole building will not be utilized efficiently. Egypt is a miracle waiting to happen. And the key to this miracle is resolving the issue of logistic aspects, and the resolving logistics is related to the customs aspect.
Yes.
Okay, so I hope that we will be able in the next 4 years to shift our focus, and the focus will be more into soft aspects, which is digitization, looking at e-commerce, trying to benefit from building the soft aspect on automation and digitization into the processes of the country, so that we will have easier customs and quicker custom clearance, and this will help us not only increase the amount of trade passing through Egypt either to Africa or to the Arab world, but it will also help us also become a manufacturing center for the world, because it will lower the cost.
So we're attracting investment.
This will actually transform into attracting more investment. Egypt is very well positioned. It has a lot of capacities. We've done a lot of investment into the hard infrastructure. We have to look at putting similar programs to what we have done. We have invested $200 billion into hard infrastructure. I would like now the government to invest maybe 10, 15, 20 billion dollars into the soft aspects. And one of the major aspects of the soft aspect, or more important one of the soft aspect, is the issue of the enabler of trade, which is the customs part.
Dr. Ahmed Al Atifi, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Really pleasure to have you with us. I'm sorry our time is up. Wish you the very best of luck in your future endeavors. I'd like to thank you, the viewers. We'll see you same time next week. Until then, good night.